Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ursula. I'm an indie author of historical fiction, and I've been an avid reader since the age of 3. Today, I'd like to be discussing some of my favorite moments from the Divine Comedy. I previously addressed this in a blog post a while ago, but now I'd like to speak about it as well and also do some readings. I'm using the Mark Musa translation, which I was lucky enough to find in a used bookstore in 2017 after I thought I had taken the Lawrence Binion edition when I moved with me, but unfortunately that appears like it went into storage, although I thought I had earmarked it for some special book. So let's get on with it. I can't stress enough what a world of difference it made to finally read the Divine Comedy in an updated translation. Because of the difficulty of reading the flowery Elizabethan English in Lawrence Binion's version, I missed so many details and plot points and only seemed to come away with a big picture and thematic impression. I also was reading extremely fast and had to go through the mental gymnastics of mentally translating the Elizabethan flowery English into modern standard English. Mark Musa's translation, meanwhile, lays everything out in plain, easy to understand language. And yes, there are a couple of points I notice when he's not exactly so literal or he's a little bit, creative with the language, but that can work sometimes to greater bring out the emotional impact or a beautiful message, things like that. So I don't mind, creative liberties within reason. Now, these are some of my favorite moments and aspects. Number one, the beautiful, memorable opening. Who can't relate to the feeling of finding oneself in a dark forest? No idea how we got there or lost the way so badly. Some people believe this wasn't mere metaphor or imaginative, inciting incident either, but that Dante truly was suicidal, even possibly attempted suicide at that time in his life. This theory is later borne out in Canto 1 of Purgatorio when Virgil tells Cato, "This man has not yet seen his final hour, although so close to it his folly brought him that little time was left to change his ways." Number 2, the beautiful ending. I haven't been outside to see the stars since lockdown started in March 2020, but when I used to look up at the night sky, I would silently recite those lines to myself. To the high fourth imagination now failed, but like to a wheel whose circling nothing jars, already on my desire and will prevailed, the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Number 3, the fact that each canticle ends with the sweet, hopeful word stars, just so, beautiful and uniting all of it, this beautiful image of hope in the face of uncertainty. You can always look up at the night sky and see beautiful stars waiting for you. And I also love the stars because you're literally looking back in time millions of years to what those stars actually looked like when they're formed, because it takes so long for their light to reach the earth. I just love, outer space and the solar system and things like that. Even though I'm big into historical fiction and history, I also enjoy science fiction because I'm imagining future worlds and I just love the solar system and the universe. Number 4, every time Virgil is compared to a father or mother. Dante lost his mother at about 5 years old and his father when he was a teenager, so one can only imagine his longing for surrogate parental figures. Even more moving when Dante turns to Virgil but finds he's gone. In Canto 30 of Purgatorio, the word mama is used. Number 5, the flipping of the trope of a man saving a damsel in distress. Beatrice is the one who saves Dante after a conference with the Virgin Mary and St. Lucia, and actually Mary is the one who ultimately set this journey in motion and told Beatrice to, go out and save your friend. He's in a lot of trouble and really needs you. Number 6, when Dante throws shade at Virgil in Canto 14 of Inferno by reminding him of a previous failure. And I, my master, you who overcame all opposition, except for those tough demons who came to meet us at the gate of Dis. That made me laugh out loud. Number 7, when Dante listens to the medieval version of a rap battle in Canto 30 of Inferno and is presently scolded by Virgil. He was probably reminded of the poems he and his buddy Forese Donati traded, in which they good-naturedly insult one another's shortcomings. And it's really funny. These two guys are swapping insults, and Dante's really getting into it and really enjoying the experience of being in hell and listening to all this fun stuff like dark comedy, and Virgil's you to have a taste for such talk is vulgar, don't do this again or you'll get what's coming to you. Number 8, in the opening of Canto 22 of Inferno, right after Devil Malacoda, as Longfellow puts it, made a trumpet of his rump, Dante reflects on the various battle cries and jousting cries he's heard. But I never saw cavalry or infantry. or ships that set sail by landmarks or by stars, signal to set off by such strange bugling. Number 9. Canto 32 of Inferno, when Dante goes psycho in Bocca degli Abati as Virgil just stands there without saying anything or even giving a disapproving look. He's usually Mr. Goody Two-Shoes on the spot. This is like, Dante is like at his like lowest and most violent. He's like kicking this guy in the head and like yanking his hair and making his teeth chatter. Like maybe he wants us to see him at his, lowest, worst point so we can be, proud of how far he's come by the end of the poem and is all his like, spiritual evolution and development. Number 10. The fact that Dante rightfully calls out Count Ugolino as a dirtbag while recording the names of his innocent sons and grandsons who were forced to die with him. Number 11. When Virgil washes Dante's sooty face with dew at the end of Canto 1 of Purgatorio, then pulls up a reed to gird his waist. Immediately afterwards, a new reed springs up. Number 12. The radical rewriting of Limbo, to include righteous non-Christian adults. Dante even builds a beautiful castle for these lights of antiquity in the golden age of Islam he so admires. Number 13. Virgil's character development. He goes from being the steady voice of reason and totally in charge, except that one time he failed in Inferno, to making more and more mistakes and not knowing what to do in Purgatorio. Number 14. Canto 9 of Purgatorio. It's jam-packed with beauty, drama, and emotion. This is also the canto where we finally enter Purgatory proper. This is one of my, absolute favorite parts of the book. And after I did the full reread after all these years earlier this year, I really feel like Purgatory is my favorite of the three canticles. It's just like so much wonderful like drama and beauty and emotional growth and spiritual like evolution happens there. Number 15. The surprising inclusion of gay men in Purgatory. Dante's views on homosexuality are a lot more nuanced and sympathetic than one would expect from that era, and I have a full blog post I've written on gay men in the Divine Comedy, and also a post I've written on non-Christians in the Divine Comedy. Perhaps I can do vlogs like fleshing those thoughts out as well here too. Number 16. Virgil's final words to Dante. I crown and meter you lord of yourself. Number 17. Canto 25 of Paradiso, where Dante poignantly imagines returning to Florence in triumph after his poem wins over the thugs who exiled him, and being crowned with laurels by the font where he was baptized. If ever it happened that the sacred poem, to which both heaven and earth have set their hand, and made me lean from laboring so long, wins over those cruel hearts that exile me, from my sweet fold where I grew up a lamb, foe to the wolves that war upon it now, with a changed voice and with another fleece, I shall return, a poet, and at my own baptismal font assume the laurel wreath, for it was there I entered in the faith that counts God's souls for him, the faith for which Peter just turned himself into my crown. Number 18. The end of Canto 14 of Paradiso, where Dante apologizes for describing a hymn as the most beautiful thing he's experienced since he hasn't looked at Beatrice yet in this sphere. This music raised my soul to heights of love. Until that moment nothing had existed that ever bound my soul in such sweet change. But this, perhaps, may seem too rash a statement, forgetting, as it were, those lovely eyes, the source of bliss in which my gaze finds rest. But since those vivid crowning beauties grow in strength the higher they ascend, and since I had not turned to look at them as yet, one must excuse me for what I accuse myself of to excuse myself, and see the truth, that sacred joy is not excluded, since it grows in perfection as we rise. Number 19. When Pope Nicholas III mistakes Dante for the evil Pope Boniface VIII in Canto 19 of Inferno, expressing surprise he's there early. This is one of the really funny moments of the poem. Number 20. The occasional breaking of the fourth wall to directly address both present and future readers. From the very first line, we're made to feel like active participants in this journey, not passive observers. Dante doesn't say, in the middle of the journey of my life, nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, or of life in general, but our life. It's so where he's inviting us to come along for the journey with him. This is just much, our story as it is his own personal feelings and spiritual reformation and growth. Number 21. Dante's tender farewell prayer to Beatrice in Canto 31 of Paradiso gives me goosebumps and moves me almost to tears. and Dante has just found Beatrice is gone. She's replaced by a strange old man who's turned out to be Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, and Bernard tells him, she asked me to lead you to your final goal, and he points out where Beatrice is. And then this is what it says in the poem. I did not say a word, but raised my eyes, and saw her there in all her glory crowned by the reflections of eternal light. Not from that place where highest thunder roars, down to the very bottom of the sea, is any mortal sight so far away, as my eyes were from Beatrice there, but distance made no difference, for her image came down to me unblurred by anything. O Lady, in whom all my hope takes strength, and who for my salvation did endure, to leave her footprints on the floor of hell, through your own power, through your own excellence, I recognize the grace and the effect of all those things I have seen with my eyes. From bondage into freedom you led me, by all those paths, by using all those means, which were within the limits of your power. Preserve in me your great munificence, so that my soul which you have healed may be pleasing to you when it slips from the flesh. Such was my prayer, and she, so far away, or so it seemed, looked down at me and smiled. Then to eternal light she turned once more. Number 22. The inclusion of a number of women who would otherwise be forgotten by history. Not only that, Dante gives them moral agency to tell their own stories and shows sympathy for victims of domestic violence instead of taking their abuser's side. While there are a couple of comments, both in the Divine Comedy and other of his works, which are undeniably sexist, such as one particular comment in De Vulgaria Eloquentia, they pale in comparison to everything else. Number 23. When Virgil talks Dante through the wall of fire around the earthly paradise at the top of Mount Purgatory, encouraging him with visions of Beatrice waiting on the other side. I have pyrophobia, fear of fire myself. I can totally relate to his fear of being confronted with this fire he has to go through. And I'm going to be reading from this now. Gripping my hands together, I leaned forward, and staring at the fire, I recalled what human bodies look like burned to death. Both my friendly guides turned toward me then, and Virgil said to me, "Oh, my dear son, there may be pain here, but there is no death. Remember all your memories. If I took care of you when we rode Geryon, shall I do less when we are nearer God? Believe me when I say that if you spent 1,000 years within the fire's heart, it would not singe a single hair of yours. And if you still cannot believe my words, approach the fire and test it for yourself. On your own robe, just touch it with the hem. It's time, high time, to put away your fears. Turn towards me, come and enter without fear." But I stood there immobile and ashamed. He said, somewhat annoyed to see me fixed and stubborn there, "Now don't you see, my son, only this wall keeps you from Beatrice." As Pyramus, about to die, heard Thisbe utter her name, he raised his eyes and saw her there. The day mulberries turned blood red. Just so my stubbornness melted away. Hearing the name which blooms eternally, within my mind, I turned to my wise guide. He shook his head and smiled, as at a child won over by an apple, as he said, "Well then, what are we doing on this side?" And entering the flames ahead of me, he asked of Statius, who, for some time now, had walked between us two, that he come last. Once in the fire, I would have gladly jumped into the depths of boiling glass to find relief from that intensity of heat. My loving father tried to comfort me, talking of Beatrice as we moved. Already I can see her eyes, it seems. This is just such one of the most wonderful emotional moments of the Divine Comedy, and I can totally relate to Dante's fear of fire. And some people think it's pathetic of him because he's only spurred on by the thoughts of a beautiful woman instead of wanting to be closer to God. But this is his story. That's what got him through, even if you personally don't agree with it or think it's stupid. It's really emotional, like a beautiful reasoning. Number 24. The dramatic midway point of Canto 16 of Purgatorio, when Dante clings to Virgil for protection as they go through a blinding cloud of smoke. The cloud of smoke descends at the very end of Canto 15 and continues throughout Canto 16. Then gradually a cloud of smoke took shape. Slowly it drifted toward us, dark as night. We were not able to escape its grip. It took away our sight and the pure air. The gloom of hell, or of a night bereft of all its planets under barren skies and totally obscured by dark dense clouds, never had wrapped my face within a veil so thick, made of such harsh and stinging stuff, as was that smoke that poured around us there. It was too much for open eyes to bear, and so my wise and faithful guide drew near, offering me his shoulder for support. Just as a blind man walks close to his guide, in order not to stray or to collide with something that could hurt or even kill him. So I moved through that foul and acrid air, hearing my guide keep telling me, "Watch out, be very careful not to lose me here." It's just one of many beautiful illustrations of the loving like father-son, mentor-mentee relationship between Dante and Virgil throughout the poem. Virgil isn't just, like a guide or the representation of reason. He becomes like Dante's surrogate father figure, his mentor, and a very dear friend to him. Number 25. The constant blending of classical antiquity with Christian theology. Despite being a devout Catholic, Dante continually shows great respect and love for the world which came before, and struggles with the then mainstream teaching that only baptized Christians can attain paradise. Righteous people come in all creeds, no matter what the medieval church believed in. Personally, also the Jewish belief has always been that the righteous of all nations have a share in the world to come. But obviously, this isn't like a Jewish poem; it's a Christian poem, and I obviously respect Dante's personal theological beliefs, and that was whatever your personal feelings, just the medieval teaching of like Christian theology and the afterlife. So you have to respect where other people are coming from, even if that's not your own personal belief system. Just kind of try to set that aside and like read like these books written by other people and try to see it through their eyes, not just, oh, I don't believe this, or that's not what people think anymore, so it must be wrong and I must like dock a half star or something for that. Just read books as they are and try to put them in historical context and intent, and don't force your own feelings onto books. And if you do a lot of extra textual study, you'll also like find a lot of new wonderful insights for this great poem. Hopefully I haven't been too rambling or anything like that. I'm still trying to get better at being confident on camera and staying on topic a little bit better, and so hopefully I will see you guys again on Sunday. And if you're wondering, that's a print of the Three Stooges behind me with a classic lineup of Larry, Moe, and Curly. And I love the Three Stooges. They're one of my favorite comedy groups. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I'm going to be discussing on Sunday this book I've heard so much about. There 12 essays on very like important topics related to like anti-Semitism. So hopefully you'll tune in then and see me then. Thanks for listening to the end. Thanks. Bye.